Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Schwartz from the Office of Basic Energy Sciences at Department of Energy. I welcome you to this informational webinar. I'm going to start in just a moment, just make sure everyone gets into the webinar before we start. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining in from. We appreciate your attendance. This is an informational webinar about the Energy Frontier Research Centers and particularly the funding opportunity announcement that Department of Energy issued just recently. As noted in the bottom right, the disclaimer, this presentation summarizes the contents of the FOA or the funding opportunity announcement. Nothing in the webinar is intended to add to, take away from, or contradict any of the requirements of the FOA. If there are any inconsistencies between the FOA and this presentation or statements from DOE personnel, the FOA is the controlling document. The webinar is being recorded and the slides that I'm about to present, as well as the recording, will be posted on the DOE Office of Science website in the next 1 to 2 days. I will mention at the end of the presentation where you can find those recordings or slides. We are also going to, after my presentation, we'll be taking questions. You can use the Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of the window to enter any questions. You can enter them during the presentation or at the end of the presentation. We'll do our best to answer those questions during the Q&A session, but if we don't get to all of them, there is another mechanism to enter questions, which I will come to at the end of the presentation. So I wanted to start with the Office of Basic Energy Sciences and the mission of Basic Energy Sciences. This is the office that supports the Energy Frontier Research Centers and has a mission to understand, predict, and ultimately control matter and energy at the electronic, atomic, and molecular levels. We fulfill that mission. BES fulfills that mission through a few different mechanisms. One is to support basic research in the discovery of new materials and the design of new chemical processes that underpin a broad range of energy technologies, and in particular plays a critical role in clean energy research. In addition, the Office of Basic Energy Sciences operates world-class scientific user facilities in X-ray, neutron, and electron beam scattering, as well as nanoscale science research centers. And managing the construction and upgrade of those facilities, as well as operation of those facilities, maintains them as world-leading facilities. I want to give you a history of the Energy Frontier Research Center program. It is based on strategic planning workshops that started in the early 2000s, and over the years, in the last nearly 20 years now, have had over 2,000 participants. The Efrc program was first proposed in 2008 with funding starting in 2009. So it is now an established program within the Office of Basic Energy Sciences. Some of the key attributes of the Efrc program is coupling basic research needs. Those basic research needs are defined in these workshop reports that I mentioned here, as well as grand challenge science, particularly for energy applications. These centers bring together academic community with the national labs to enable high quality collaborative research with relevance to energy science and technology. If successful, they demonstrate scientific productivity and world leadership and make progress in ways that would not have been likely through individual research efforts. The collaborative efforts of these teams is important. The centers are also encouraged to use effective communications to tell an inspiring story concerning the value of fundamental research that supports clean energy and sustainability. The workshop reports that I've referred to, some of which are shown here in these images at the top, are all available on the DOE website at the link provided at the bottom. This is a history of the awards in the program. The blue bars show the number of awards as a function of time, again, starting in 2009 when the program was initiated. The orange line shows the total funding, total annual budget for the program throughout that time, which dropped in 2009 because, dropped in 2014 because some of the 16 of the original awards made in 2009 were funded by the so-called Recovery Act of 2009. But we've seen some increase in the funding and the number of awards over the years. You also see that starting in 2014, we have had funding opportunity announcements and awards made every 2 years in the even years. And so here we are today in fiscal year 2022 with the current funding opportunity announcement that I'm referring to. Cumulatively over those years from 2009 until 2021, there have been 88 EFRCs supported by DOE, doing research in 41 states and the District of Columbia. Thousands of researchers, senior investigators, as well as students and postdocs involved at around 175 different institutions. And that's what's shown here in the map. These are the institutions that have been involved in EFRCs, the lead institutions shown as stars, partner institutions shown as dots, and the colors identifying the types of institutions. Current EFRCs that are active today, there are 41 of them, involve about 650 senior investigators, over 1,500 postdocs, graduate students, and undergraduate and technical staff at 110 institutions in 33 states. Topically, the current EFRCs, as I said, there are 41 of them that are currently active. Topically, they span a broad scientific space that is shown here. I won't read through all of these topics. And some centers, of course, do cross over some of these topical areas, but we've binned them into these groups here, and it gives you a flavor for the scientific scope of the program. It really does span across much or all of what basic energy sciences does from subsurface geoscience to nuclear research, environmental management, energy storage, catalysis, quantum materials and QIS, microelectronics, et cetera. So it gives you a sense for the breadth of the program. The program has been impactful over these dozen or so years since it started. These are basic science projects, and the primary output is peer-reviewed publications. There have been, as of May of last year, when we collect annual reports, over 14,000 peer-reviewed publications collectively from the centers. But in addition, some of those centers the research in some of those centers has led to intellectual property, hundreds of invention disclosures, interactions with a number of companies that have benefited from EFRC research, and patent applications, and including over 200 patents issued over that time. The plot on the right gives you a sense of the distribution of those companies that I mentioned here. Again, given the scope of the science that the centers are doing, the companies are active in a number of different topical areas, and also a mix of size, startups, mid-sized companies, and large companies. This slide is intended to give you some idea of what an EFRC is, or what an successful EFRC is. We call these the so-called good practices. We don't say best practices because, in fact, different EFRCs operate differently and can be successful. But over the years, we have identified some attributes of EFRCs that we feel lead to success. I will note at the bottom here, these are not the merit review criteria under which proposals will be reviewed, but these are important things to keep in mind as you formulate an EFRC, which is, as the image shows here, a collective effort involving multiple researchers. So we expect an EFRC to have a compelling mission that everyone in the center understands and embraces. We expect the EFRCs to take some risks, to set some stretch goals, high-risk research that would likely not be attempted by individual investigators working on smaller projects. We expect adaptive management to evaluate progress and redirect resources in response to promising new opportunities or changes within the center or within the field in which the center is operating. Strong synergy among the researchers working toward these collectively developed objectives that support the mission defined by the center. Accelerated success and also accelerated failure to enable adjustments and key decisions to lead to the most impactful science. So tied closely to the adaptive management, recognizing what's going well and what's not going well and making the adjustments in order to optimize the impact of the research. And finally, the centers have become, and we hope will continue to be, an excellent training ground for next generation of scientists in this type of multidisciplinary collaborative research, particularly students, postdocs, and other early career scientists. Okay, turning now to the specific funding opportunity announcement that is the subject of this webinar. I have a series of slides here summarizing some of the key elements of the funding opportunity announcement. I will say that you should, of course, read the entire funding opportunity announcement in anticipation of submitting pre-applications or applications, but here we try to highlight some of the most important elements. So the scientific scope, which is defined in section 1 of the FOA, applications from multidisciplinary teams will be required to propose both discovery science and use-inspired basic research that addresses priority research directions and opportunities identified by a series of BES workshops and roundtable reports. The FOA emphasizes the following science focus areas: science for clean energy, science for advanced manufacturing, and a series of other priority research areas for the department, and some of the specifics, the specific topical areas within those categories are identified here. Each of those has an associated workshop or roundtable report that is mentioned up here that are referenced in the FOA. So section 1 of the FOA includes links to the workshops and roundtable reports for each of those topical areas. The EFRCs will continue to support cross-DOE initiatives, including the recently announced Energy Earthshots, and there's a link here to those Earthshots. There are a number of cross-DOE initiatives in topical areas that are relevant to these Energy Frontier Research Centers. This funding opportunity announcement solicits both new and renewal applications from the existing centers, as well as new applications from institutions interested in starting new EFRCs. The eligible applicants, again defined in the FOA, section 3 of the FOA, are all types of domestic entities, including, for example, universities and colleges, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, and DOE national laboratories. Other U.S. federal agencies or FFRDCs, federally funded research and development centers, may participate, but only as partners, not as the lead institutions. And again, all of the eligibility requirements are defined in section 3 of the FOA. All of the applications are expected to involve multidisciplinary research teams. Multi-institutional applications are encouraged, but not a requirement. The FOA also encourages applications led by or in partnership with minority-serving institutions, including historically Black colleges and universities that are underrepresented in the current BES portfolio, as well as applications including individuals from groups that are historically underrepresented in STEM. And there's additional information and links provided here as well as in the FOA for this topic. Energy Frontier Research Center award information as defined in section 2 of the FOA. The estimated funding, so DOE anticipates that, subject to the availability of appropriations, a total of up to $420 million in current and future fiscal year funds will be used to support awards under this FOA. The period of performance is in DOE anticipates making awards with project periods of up to 4 years. The maximum minimum award size that DOE anticipates, which has been the same for a number of years, is, well, maximum $4 million, minimum $2 million. So a range of $2 to $4 million per center per year. The expected number of awards and award size will depend on the number of meritorious applications and the availability of appropriated funds. DOE also anticipates awarding grants, interagency agreements, as well as national laboratory authorizations under this FOA. Pre-applications are required for this funding opportunity announcement. There is a limit of 3 pre-applications per lead institution. So a lead institution may submit no more than 3 pre-applications. Pre-applications are a requirement of the FOA. The pre-application requirements are defined in section 4B of the FOA, and I encourage you to read the details there. I've highlighted some key elements here. The pre-application must have a cover page, and that cover page must include a signature from an official of the lead institution. For the DOE national labs, this should be the laboratory director. For other applicants, this should be someone who has the authority over research activities for the entire institution. And again, there's some additional information in the funding opportunity announcement about this signature, but this is a requirement that should be paid close attention to. Program managers within DOE may evaluate all or some portion of the pre-applications to determine their competitiveness within a scientific topic. Any such review will be conducted by no fewer than 3 federal program managers based on the following criteria: responsiveness to the objectives and requirements of the FOA, scientific and technical merit, appropriateness of the proposed research approaches, and likelihood of scientific impact. Reviews within a topical field will be comparative. This will be a comparative review with priority given to scientifically innovative and forward-looking basic research with the highest likelihood of success as an application. Applicants with the highest rated pre-applications will be encouraged to submit applications. Others will be discouraged from submitting applications. So this is a process by which a subset of those who submit pre-applications will be encouraged to submit full applications. Some key dates. The FOA was issued on December 21st of last year, 2021. These required pre-applications are due no later than February 15th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. These pre-applications must be submitted via the DOE Portfolio Analysis and Management System, or PAMS. DOE anticipates responding to those pre-applications with the encourage or discourage notices that I mentioned on the previous slide by March 22nd, 2022. So DOE will notify all pre-applicants about whether or not they are encouraged to submit an application. DOE expects to encourage at least 100 applications, with the exact number based on the pre-application review. The application due date for those who are encouraged to submit is May 3rd, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Applications that have not been encouraged by DOE may likely be declined without merit review. So again, this is only for those who have been encouraged after the pre-application stage. And the applications must be submitted via grants.gov. DOE anticipates award selections to be made by the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2022. That's the fourth quarter of the federal fiscal year is July through September, and that awards will be made in fiscal year 2022. We list here a checklist for avoiding what we've found to be some common errors, particularly related to the pre-application. Please note, this is not a comprehensive list of all the FOA requirements. We do, again, encourage you to read the entire FOA. But importantly, the scope of a pre-application must address priority research directions or priority research opportunities defined in the reports referenced in section 1 of the FOA, which I mentioned earlier in this presentation. No applied research or technology development should be included in pre-applications for the EFRC program. This is a fundamental science program. The FOA also requires the submission of 2 tables with the pre-applications, both of which should be submitted in Excel format by email to the email address shown here and defined in the FOA. Templates are provided both on the Office of Science Funding Opportunity website as well as in grants.gov. Pre-applications without these 2 tables may be discouraged without review. The first table is a table listing the reports that are addressed by the pre-application. These are the reports defined again in section 1 of the FOA, along with the priority research directions and opportunities. I refer you specifically to page 15 of the FOA. In addition, a list of individuals who should not serve as reviewers because of conflicts of interest must be included, again, using the template provided and submitted via email. I've referred people to page 15 and page 51 of the FOA for additional information about that table. Those 2 tables are required. As I mentioned earlier, the cover page of the pre-application must include the signature of an official from the lead institution. This should be someone who has authority over research activities for the entire institution. And these signatures will be used to identify pre-applications that have the institution's support. Pre-applications without institutional support may also be discouraged without review. Again, this signature is a requirement and should be on the cover page of the pre-application. Each pre-application must designate a single EFRC director. There may be multiple other investigators, but one person must be identified as the single EFRC director, also the lead principal investigator for the application. Submit the pre-applications via PAMS, as I mentioned earlier, not via grants.gov, and they're due again February 15th, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I note that late submissions of pre-applications are rarely accepted. There is language in the FOA in the section referenced here about the possibility of requesting a late submission, but they are rarely granted. Second slide, similar to the first one, this is now a checklist for avoiding common errors at the application stage for those that are encouraged to submit an application. Again, not a comprehensive list of all FOA requirements. Tables are also required for submission with the application to the same email address mentioned here. In this case, there are 3. There's the same 2 tables updated if there are any changes between the pre-application and the application. In addition, a 3rd table summarizing the budget for the application. And I refer to pages 20 and 29 of the FOA for more information about that budget table. The budget requirement, one key budget requirement is the following. The lead institution must request a larger percentage of the budget than each of the other institutional partners. So again, multi-institutional applications are encouraged, not required, but if there are multiple partner institutions participating in an application, the lead institution will submit a single application on behalf of all of the partners, and the budget must reflect that that institution receives a larger percentage than any of the other partners. I'll also point out biographical sketch and current and pending support requirements, which for DOE have changed in recent years. And I would encourage all applicants to read carefully the instructions in the FOA. These are required for each senior key personnel listed in the FOA at both the lead institution and any partner institutions. And you should follow the instructions in the FOA, including the use of an NSF format that DOE has currently adopted for use for both of these documents. You do not need to include a list of individuals who are conflicted from serving as merit reviewers as part of the biographical sketch because it is submitted as one of these tables, the second one listed here. So it does not need to be included on the biographical sketch. For the current and pending support, applicants are encouraged to ensure that a complete list of activities is included regardless of the source of funding. The Efrc director named on the application must be the same as the person named on the pre-application. Applications are submitted via grants.gov, not via PAMS, and the due date again, May 3rd, 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. And once again, late submissions of applications are rarely accepted, and a reference here to the section of the FOA that addresses that. Okay, as I wrap up shortly and start to take questions, I list here some places where one can find more information. I know this was a relatively quick summary. There is a lot of more information on various places. The Energy Frontier Center website is listed here. You can find lots of information about the current centers, the history of the program, et cetera. The funding opportunity announcement is available on the DOE Office of Science website here on the funding opportunities page. I strongly encourage all interested applicants to read that. Again, this was a summary of the FOA, but the details in the FOA are important. The funding opportunity announcement is also available in grants.gov, of course. We do have a document posted also on our website called our Good Practices document. And this is an expanded resource for that single slide that I showed earlier that summarized what we have found over the years to be characteristics of strong, successful EFRCs. This document is a great reference document. It's referenced in the FOA, and I would encourage interested applicants to read it, particularly if you're not familiar with the EFRC program. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. The slides that I've shown, as well as the recording, will be posted on this funding opportunity announcement page. So right where the funding opportunity announcement itself is, within the next day or two, we will be able to post these materials. As I mentioned, we will be taking questions here through the Zoom Q&A window. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can in the time allowed. This webinar will conclude at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Additionally, questions about the FOA can be submitted through a site called FedConnect, www.fedconnect.net. You do have to register for FedConnect and respond as an interested party to submit questions, but this also allows you then to see all of the questions that have been asked and answered. So even any question that's asked and answered is available to all interested parties. And so I would encourage people to register and look at that Q&A there. If you have questions that don't get answered during this webinar, or that you have additional questions after the webinar concludes, I would encourage you to submit them into the FedConnect site, and DOE will answer them through that site. Okay, so this is my concluding slide, and really just summarizes questions and answers. They can be submitted via the Zoom Q&A window, which should be accessible at the bottom of your Zoom window with a button that says Q&A. And again, if your question is not answered today, or you have additional questions, please submit them via fedconnect.net. And with that, I thank you for your attention. My colleague, a couple of my colleagues are here with me. They've been monitoring the Q&A. I am going to stop my sharing at this point so I can see the Q&A window, and we can start to try to answer questions. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna read questions because I know that the participants are not able to see the questions. So I will read questions and then try to answer them. First question: can a PI be a thrust leader in 2 different centers? So a PI may be on multiple applications. So that's FOA. There's language in the funding opportunity announcement that addresses this. A PI, the only restriction is the PI may not be designated as the director of multiple centers, but a PI may be on multiple applications in whatever role. Question 2, has the hydrogen report been published yet? No, there was excuse me, as this questioner notes, there is a link in the funding opportunity announcement to a summary brochure for a hydrogen workshop that was held last year in August, if I recall. The summary brochure is currently available on the website. The report is to be published soon, but has not yet been published. And I don't have a publication date for that report yet. I would encourage you to continue to monitor the website for that. We will also likely issue a update to the funding opportunity announcement when that report is available. Question 3, can EFRC have more than one focus area, such as energy storage and quantum science? So there is no language in the funding opportunity announcement that restricts the number of focus areas or the scope of the EFRC. We do encourage you to put together a cohesive application where all the parts within the scope are connected and held together, but that is the guidance. There is no limitation on the number of focus areas that are in the application. Are partnerships with DOE national laboratories required or highly encouraged for institutions? They are neither required nor highly encouraged. It is allowable to submit multi-institutional applications. Those applications can be led by any institution in partnership with any other institution. Question 5, this is a good one. This has actually been asked on FedConnect already. The table templates have due dates that are several weeks before the pre-proposal due date. Is this correct? No, that was an error. Thank you. A number of people have noted that, and we apologize. That question has been asked and answered in FedConnect, and the templates have now been updated to have the correct due dates, which are aligned with the due dates for the pre-application and applications. Okay, let's see. Two questions about foreign partners. Is foreign participation allowed as co-PI or senior personnel? Yes, foreign institutions may participate as partner institutions on the EFRC applications. Foreign institutions may not be the lead institution, but foreign institutions may be included as partner institutions. Similar, second question was similar. Are international collaboration possible under this FOA? And the answer is yes. Is there a limit to the maximum number of institutions that participate in a single proposal? No. The FOA does not define a limit on either the minimum, well, I guess the minimum arguably is 1. You have to have at least 1, but there's no limit on the minimum or maximum number of institutions that participate in a single proposal. Okay, there is a question about minority serving institutions. How can minority serving institutions participate with interested teams? Would you be facilitating teaming arrangements? DOE is not going to facilitate those teaming arrangements. We are encouraging the applicants to explore mechanisms for building those teaming arrangements. Sorry, I apologize for the pauses as I scan through questions. Okay, this is, I'll read this one. Since this EFRC FOA was issued in 2021, the information on the digital data management section of the DOE website would seem to indicate that the guidance that expired on 12/31/21 is the operative guidance. Is that indeed the case, or is it your intention that the 2022 guidance applies? So this is a bit of a detailed question, but yes, that is indeed the case. The funding opportunity announcement was issued in 2021, and the updated guidance regarding digital data management plans, which was posted on January 1 of this year, only applies to funding opportunity announcements issued after January 1. So because this funding opportunity announcement was issued prior to January 1, 2022, the prior guidance applies. Will each science focus area be awarded? I cannot comment on that. That depends on the applications and the meritorious applications that come in. We do strive to have a broad and diverse portfolio of EFRCs, as you saw in one of my slides that showed the current existing EFRCs spanning many scientific research areas. That is one of the goals of the program, but the specific awards that will be made under this FOA, I cannot comment on. Can new PIs be added in the full proposal that were not included in the pre-application? The answer is yes. The director should be the same, and we expect not significant changes, but it is allowable to make changes to the partnerships and the PIs between the pre-application and, if the pre-application is encouraged, the application. For the budget, does larger percentage mean greater than 51%? No, it doesn't mean greater than 50. It doesn't have to have them. It just has to have a larger percentage than any of the other partner institutions. So it does not have to be greater than 51% of the total budget, just has to be the largest fraction of the budget. If a report has multiple PRDs, these are the so-called priority research directions. So I just for context, each of those reports that I mentioned, depending on the nature of the workshop and the report, define what we call priority research directions, or in some cases, priority research opportunities, or PROs. So this answer applies to both of those. Does the scope have to fulfill all PRDs, or multiple, or just one is enough? That is entirely up to you as the applicant to determine what the scope is addressing. There is no requirement in the FOA for any particular number of those PRDs. Will currently funded projects be evaluated differently and given priority, et cetera? And the answer is no. We try to treat all applications, whether they are new or renewal, equally, using the same merit review criteria for those applications, both the new and the renewal applications. Okay, it seems maybe we got a few questions about the tables, so I'll try to address those. For the second table, which I think must mean the list of PIs and collaborators that are conflicted. The question is, for the second table, should the list cover all the participants or just the PIs? So if the question means all, it does not have to cover graduate students and postdocs and researchers. Those researchers do not need to be included, but all what the FOA defines as senior/key personnel, anybody who shows up as a senior key personnel on the budget table for the application should also show up on that table with their list of collaborators, associated list of collaborators, as a mechanism for us to determine potential conflicts of interest for the merit review process. Is it encouraged to make reference to Earthshot documents in the topical areas in which in those scientific research areas? You applicants are certainly allowed to make reference to those Earthshots, which are referenced in the funding opportunity announcement. But the scope of this funding opportunity announcement extends beyond just those Earthshot topical areas. So there were some questions apparently about industry partners. As in particular, is it okay to partner with industry members as active team members? And the answer is yes. As I mentioned, both nonprofit and for-profit research organizations are eligible to apply under this funding opportunity announcement, either as lead or as partner institutions. Question about team composition. Will a team composed mostly of early career professionals be considered competitive? I would say that the competitiveness of the application depends on the content of the application and all the merit review criteria that we use. And so I can't prejudge, I can't really answer that question and prejudge a particular competitiveness of an application based on that one criteria. Is this FOA targeting specific starting/ending technology readiness levels or TRLs? We don't, what I would say is no, it doesn't. The FOA has no mention of technology readiness levels in it. So that's the simple answer. And in general, basic energy sciences does not use the language of technology readiness levels because we are really at the low end of the TRL scale. This is fundamental basic research that we are supporting, not technology development. Is cost share required? The answer is no. Is there a maximum number of PIs per center? The answer is no. I guess we got a related question about the average number. I actually don't want to misstate it, so I'm not going to try to answer that question. We have, I would just say, over the years had a pretty wide range in the number of principal investigators. And again, we really want the team to be well matched to the work and the scope of the work and the defined work. And there's no one right size for an Energy Frontier Research Center, and there's no one correct structure for how the center is organized. The two go together. Follow up on the international question about international partners. Can international collaborators receive funds? And the answer is yes. The funding opportunity announcement allows for international partners to be funded partners. So that can be proposed, and if it is justified and awarded, then that can be awarded. Can the PI be an early career scientist, or is a senior scientist preferred? And the FOA says nothing about the seniority career stage of any of the applicants. Actually, maybe refers as well to the prior question. So there is no preference given in the FOA for career stage for any of the applicants. Is a senior personnel in a proposal allowed if they are currently a member of an existing EFRC? And the answer is yes. Is there a specific guidance to prepare a budget? No, I think I would refer you back to the guidance that is in the funding opportunity announcements about the budget. And if you have more specific questions, budget related questions, those should probably get submitted to Fed Connect to be answered by the contracting staff. Excuse me. Okay, I'm just scanning through questions here. Okay, this is a good question. It's helpful. Excuse me. Is national lab funding included in the total budget, or is it counted separately? For the purposes of the submission of an application, it should be included in the total budget, and it can be considered that way. There's language in the FOA about actual awarding of awards to national labs, either as the lead or partnership, and the way that funds will move to DOE national labs. Those specifics are laid out in the FOA, and I won't try to state them off the top of my head now. But from the perspective of an application, the national lab funding is included as part of the total budget for that application. There are a couple of questions. Apparently, along this line, does the PI of the lead organization serve as EFRC director? And yes, that is the norm. So the lead organization will define a principal investigator or a lead principal investigator, and that person is expected to be what we call the EFRC director from a programmatic perspective. You mentioned the application may be from nonprofit, 501c3, private, and for-profit entities. Correct. So again, I refer you to the specific language in the FOA to make sure that your institution is eligible based on the language in the FOA. But in general, yes, those institutions, domestic institutions in those categories are eligible. Okay, can I repeat what I said about an error that was posted on FedConnect? So the templated file, this is the templates that we provided, Excel templates that are available both in grants.gov and on the DOE Funding Opportunity Announcement website, and are to be used for submission of those tables that I mentioned. The instructions for those templates had an error in the due date. The due dates for the templates should be submitted by the same, for pre-applications, the two templates should be submitted by the same due date, February 15th, that's shown on the cover of the funding opportunity announcement. And similarly, for the application stage, the templates should be submitted again via email by the May 3rd due date for applications. There was an error in the original templates. That's now been corrected, and the updated templates have the correct submission dates for those. And we apologize for that. This is a good question. Are university-led and DOE lab-led proposals competing directly with one another, or are there separate pools of funding for universities and labs? They are competing directly with one another. There is a single funding opportunity announcement, and that actually applies beyond just those two categories, but all eligible entities, all eligible institutions are competing equally against in the single FOA. We have not carved out funds for types of institutions. Is industrial partnership or participation encouraged? I would just say that it's allowable. And it is, again, the makeup of an EFRC application, the institutional makeup, the individual makeup should be defined by the scope of the research goals for that application. You should have the strongest team, both team of institutions and or individuals that you can put forward for that. We do not have a preference for types of institutions. That is, and no specific partnering is encouraged by the FOA. Can you please confirm that biosketches are not required for the pre-application? That is correct. Biosketches are only the biosketches and current and pending, both of those documents I mentioned for each of the senior key personnel are required only at the application stage. Okay. Another question about distribution. The FOA areas overlap with current EFRC's general themes. Are applications evaluated to ensure that their scopes do not overlap in a major manner with the current EFRCs? Any guidance about this concern? So we are always looking at the scope of applications, the scope of existing projects, and the scope of the portfolio to look at balance. So in a broad sense, yes, that is something we look at. I will point out that many of the current EFRCs that are active received their last award, whether it was a new or renewal award, 4 years ago in 2018. So they are in their final year of the current award period and are eligible to submit renewal applications. There are some awards that were made, of course, in 2020 that are only 2 years through a 4-year award period. Those are not being recompeted, but this is a recompetition of the awards that were made 4 years ago. And yes, we look at the scope of the whole portfolio and consider that when making programmatic decisions. Good question. Do we indicate the budget amount requested in the pre-proposal narrative, or do we include it on the PAM site? The pre-application, and again, I direct you back to the FOA to read the requirements. The pre-application does not require a budget. No budget information is requested at the pre-application stage. So I think I'm going to make a general. We have a number of questions about distribution of the centers of the awards we make, of the program, topical distribution, geographic distribution, I think institutional distribution. Those are all considerations that are taken into account as part of the process of making selections. So if you read the FOA, and I would direct you to the section of the FOA that talks about the merit review process and the selection process, and there lays out very clearly the merit review criteria that are used for assessing merit review, but then the subsequent criteria, including the programmatic policy factors that are included, and diversity along various ways is part of that consideration. I would direct you to that section of the FOA. Can't remember the section number, I apologize, but I would direct you to that section of the FOA for the details of the types of factors that are taken into consideration as part of the process of making award selections. My colleague, Mike Hill, who's here from the contracting office, has helpfully noted that is section 5 that lays out the so-called program policy factors that I mentioned. I think section 5 is also the merit review section. Is that correct, Mike? Yes, Mike confirms that. Thank you. Does the institutional signature on pre-application cover pages need to be a digital signature? Yes, I believe and again, I direct you to the FOA, but I believe that the FOA specifies a digital signature is required on the cover page, specifically digital. Are there limits to the length of the pre-proposal? Yes, read the FOA. It's specified in the FOA. The pre-proposal length is specified in the FOA. There are different pieces with the cover page plus the tables, but the narrative section, I hope I'm going to get this right, and one of my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, the narrative section is limited to 5 pages. There's also some specifics of what needs included in those 5 pages. So I direct you to the specifics in the funding opportunity announcement. Okay, good question. Is the summary budget table the only budget table needed for EFRC application, or detailed budget is required as well? Detailed budget is required as well. So this, the grants.gov package, grants.gov has all the required forms that along with the application, and I direct you and your sponsored research office or whatever offices your institution handles this to go there. But the summary budget is an additional requirement for this fall. All excuse me, all applications to do funding opportunity announcements require detailed budgets using the forms provided in grants.gov. Will you make a transcript of this Q&A available afterwards? So the Q&A is being recorded. The recording will be available, the audio and visual recording. I will be a little careful here. I believe we will have a transcript, but I'm not 100% sure. So we will, if the transcript is available, we will try to make it available, posted as well, if we can. Is there a generally accepted definition for PI versus senior key personnel? Are all co-PIs? So this does cause some confusion, and I don't want to. I want to be careful here that I speak correctly. I'm going to refer you back to the definitions that are included in the funding opportunity announcement, and encourage you to read those, and hope that will answer your questions. If you have specifics, situations in which you would like a specific answer regarding a certain personnel and how they are could or should be classified, I would encourage you to submit that question into Fed Connect. It becomes difficult to make general answers about such things sometimes. What is different about this solicitation versus the previous ones? I assume that means the previous EFRC FOAs. Focus change, more funding. I think I would just defer. The previous are available. You can go read them. So I would encourage you, if you want to know what the differences are, to read the funding opportunity announcements. I don't think I could give a comprehensive list of the differences in any way here that would be fair. If an institution received an EFRC in a prior competition but was not renewed, can the same institution apply for another EFRC with a different research focus? Yes. Sure, I need to say more about that. Yes, there's no limitation that I see in that question. I see here, I want to thank my colleague Robin Hayes, who has been helping me navigate through all these questions. I also, again, apologize if we're not getting to everyone. If you have a question that you do really would like to get an answer to, and it doesn't get answered here, then I would again encourage you to use the Fed Connect portal to get that question submitted and answered. Would you recommend contacting the program manager before submitting pre-applications? No, in fact, the nature of this funding opportunity announcement is that the program managers are directed not to have individual conversations with individual applicants. We're trying to do this as a service to the community, which is available to any applicant. And the point of the Fed Connect portal is that all questions that are asked and answered get seen by all potential applicants. So So we do not encourage direct contact to DOE program managers regarding the pre-applications or the applications. Do the two tables need to be converted to PDF and attached to the pre-application narrative? No. They need to be submitted via email using the email address that I put in my slides and that is in the FOA. The time window between when the applicants are informed of whether they are encouraged and when the final application is due is extremely short. Will the final application date be pushed back? No, I don't anticipate a pushback of that date. There's also a follow-on question I see here. When does DOE plan to announce the winners or the awardees after the May 3rd deadline? As I mentioned, we anticipate the award announcements will be in the July through September timeframe. We don't have a specific date. Should a management plan be included in the pre-application? I would direct you back to the specific guidance on what should be in a pre-application that is in the funding opportunity announcement and follow that. There's the section of the funding opportunity announcement that lays out both for the pre-application and the application what content should go into those documents. And I would encourage you to follow that guidance. All right, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. I really appreciate all of you who participated. I hope this was valuable. Once again, I encourage you, if you didn't get your question answered or if you have subsequent questions, to use the Fed Connect portal. My colleague, Mike Hill, is reminding me, I may have misstated regarding regarding the tables that are the answer to the question about should the tables be converted and included. It may be, and now I apologize if I misstated. Again, please read the section on the pre-application carefully. The tables need to be submitted via email. We may have also requested the tables to be included, the table of one of the table with the list of reports and priority research directions to be included as part of the pre-application, potentially. But again, I encourage you to read the requirements in the FOA. That takes precedent over what I said, specifically if I mistakenly said something incorrect. Yeah, those are. Okay, once again, I think we're at the end of the hour. I think I will wrap this up now. I do want to say thank you once again to Robin Hayes, who helped me out with this, Mike Hill, who from the DOE Contracting Office, who has been in the background supporting throughout the process. Thanks to all of you who have stuck around to the end of the hour for participating, and thanks for all the great questions. We really appreciate it, and we encourage you to really read the FOA. All of the details are in that document. If there are elements that are still unclear, use the Fed Connect. Excuse me. Apparently, it's time to end because my voice has decided to cut out. We encourage you to use the Fed Connect portal to get those questions answered. Please pay attention to the deadlines, pay attention to the details of the requirements in the FOA, and we wish you all the best of luck in your research. Thank you very much.